I've replayed that moment in the kitchen 1,000 times in my mind. The way the afternoon light cast long shadows across the counter, the sound of the refrigerator humming in the background, the smell of the lasagna I'd prepared still lingering in the air. And his words, those 5 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about the man I'd married. I'm taking everything. You get the kid. That's how my world collapsed, not with dramatic screaming or shattered plates against walls, but with a casual cruelty delivered between sips of coffee. I never imagined my life would unravel over a business ledger, but there we were. Before. We jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Olivia Chen. I'm a 37-year-old accountant from Millbrook, a small town just north enough of the city to boast about its quiet streets, but close enough for a reasonable commute. I met Ryan when we were both working at the same financial firm. He was charming, ambitious, with a smile that could convince clients to sign anything he put in front of them. I was the one who made sure the numbers actually worked, the steady hand behind his flashy presentations. Back then, I thought our differences complemented each other. I didn't realize they would eventually tear us apart. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I woke at 5:30, practiced yoga while the house was still quiet, and made breakfast for our son, Lucas. At 8, he was already showing signs of my methodical nature, his dinosaur collection arranged by geologic era, his bookshelf organized by subject rather than author. He had my dark hair and analytical mind, but Ryan's contagious laugh and dimples. "Mom, can we have pizza tonight?" Lucas asked, carefully cutting his pancakes into perfect triangles before drowning them in maple syrup. "Sure, buddy. I'll pick some up on my way home," I promised, checking my watch. Ryan should have been downstairs by now. He had an important client meeting at 9, and he was never late for those. I called up the stairs. "Ryan, you're running behind." No answer, just the sound of drawers opening and closing. Lucas finished his breakfast and headed upstairs to brush his teeth. I started loading the dishwasher when I heard it, the distinctive thud of a suitcase being dragged down the stairs. I turned, dishcloth still in hand, to see Ryan in his best charcoal suit, pulling not 1 but 2 large suitcases behind him. "What's going on? Is your conference this week?" "I thought that was next month," I said, trying to keep my voice light despite the immediate tightening in my chest. Ryan placed the suitcases by the door and straightened his tie. "I'm leaving, Olivia." Just like that. 3 words delivered with the same inflection he might use to say he was running to the store. No emotion, no hesitation. "Leaving? For where? For how long?" The questions tumbled out as I tried to process what was happening. "For good," he replied, checking his watch. "I've signed a lease on a condo downtown. I've been planning this for a while." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Planning what exactly?" "My exit strategy." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "My lawyer drew these up. It's straightforward. I'm taking the investment accounts, the vacation property, and my car, obviously. You can keep the house for now, though we'll need to sell it eventually." He spoke with the detached efficiency he usually reserved for difficult clients. "What are you talking about? We can't just... This isn't how..." I struggled to form coherent thoughts as my world collapsed inward. That's when she appeared in the doorway. Marissa, Ryan's assistant, a woman 15 years younger than me with immaculate makeup even at this early hour. She'd been to our home for company parties, had sent Lucas a birthday card just last month. Now she stood in my kitchen wearing an expression that mixed triumph with performative sympathy. "The car's running," she said to Ryan, not quite meeting my eyes. I looked between them, the reality crashing down on me. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Ryan shrugged. "Does it matter?" It's been over between us for years, Olivia. You've been too busy with spreadsheets and Lucas's science projects to notice. Marissa stepped further into the kitchen, her designer boots clicking on the tile floor. Ryan, we should go. The movers will be at the condo at 10. She said it casually, like they were discussing lunch plans instead of dismantling my family in real time. I gripped the counter to steady myself. You can't just walk out. What about Lucas? What about... That's the thing, Ryan interrupted, checking his watch again. I'm taking everything we've built. The accounts, the investments, the connections. I've already transferred most of our joint funds. He looked up at me with cold efficiency. I'm taking everything. You get the kid. I felt like I'd been slapped. Like Lucas, our son, our brilliant, sensitive boy who collected interesting rocks and could name every constellation in the night sky, was being dismissed as some consolation prize, a burden rather than a blessing. You're talking about your son, I said, my voice finding its strength. Not some leftover. Marissa had the audacity to laugh, a small, dismissive sound she tried to cover with a cough. Well, she said, glancing at Ryan with complicity. At least the kid is good at math. Chip off the old block and all that. They exchanged a look of such casual cruelty that I felt physically ill. I opened my mouth to respond when I heard it, the sound of Lucas coming down the stairs, humming the theme from his favorite science show. I quickly wiped my eyes and turned away, busying myself with the dishes, determined he wouldn't see me break. Ryan moved toward the door, grabbing his suitcases. I'll have my lawyer contact yours. Don't make this difficult, Olivia. Dad? Lucas appeared at the bottom of the stairs, backpack slung over one shoulder, confusion clouding his face as he took in the suitcases. Are you going somewhere? Ryan hesitated for the first time that morning. I'm moving to a new place, buddy. For work. You'll visit sometimes. Lucas looked from his father to me, to Marissa, and back again. His perceptive eyes, taking in more than any 8-year-old should have to process. But we're supposed to go to the planetarium this weekend. You promised. We'll reschedule, Ryan said, not quite meeting Lucas's eyes. I've got to go now. I didn't scream or throw things as they left. I didn't collapse into tears. Instead, I picked up Lucas's science fair project outline from the counter, a meticulously detailed plan for testing water quality in our local creek, and walked past them toward my son. Lucas stood frozen, small and confused, watching his father walk out with a woman who wasn't his mother. I knelt down to his level, holding his project between us like a shield. Hey, buddy. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Let's look at this water testing plan again. I think we need more control samples, don't you? Lucas didn't answer. He was watching the door close behind his father. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. He will never think he was the cause of this. He will never doubt his worth because his father couldn't see it. I'd take the kid. I wanted the kid. And I would protect him from anyone who couldn't recognize the treasure he was, especially his father. But that's not the most important part of my story. What you really need to hear about is what happened 6 weeks later in family court. That's when Lucas, my quiet, thoughtful boy who rarely spoke up in class, walked up to the judge, cleared his throat, and said 7 words that changed everything. Can I show you what my dad wrote? The entire courtroom fell silent. The judge raised her eyebrows. Ryan's expensive attorney suddenly looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. Marissa, sitting directly behind Ryan in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, visibly paled. And in that moment, my son held something more powerful than all the legal arguments combined: the unfiltered truth. He was only 8, but he understood more than anyone realized. Before I tell you about that pivotal moment, though, I need to take you back to the beginning so you can understand why Lucas's courage that day wasn't just about a child speaking up. It was about finally breaking a pattern that had been suffocating us both for years. Ryan and I met 11 years ago during tax season. I was working late nights as a junior accountant, and he was an investment advisor who needed help with a complicated client portfolio. He brought coffee and stayed to help me organize the paperwork. It was the first time anyone had ever recognized the artistry in my methodical work. Most people saw spreadsheets. Ryan, at least initially, saw the person creating them. Our courtship was swift and calculated, like everything Ryan did. 6 months after we met, he proposed with a precisely selected diamond and a 5-year plan for our future. I said yes because he made me feel valued in a professional world that often overlooked women like me. Women who preferred analytical thinking to office politics, who found beauty in balanced ledgers. We married in a carefully orchestrated ceremony that his mother planned down to the last flower. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs in how little input I had, in how my preferences were noted but ultimately overruled in favor of appearances. But I was in love with the idea of being understood, of building something meaningful with someone who appeared to value precision as much as I did. Lucas came along 3 years later. From the moment he was born, he was observant, taking everything in with a solemnity unusual for an infant. Ryan was initially proud. He'd show off Lucas to clients, talking about his son's advanced development. But as Lucas grew from baby to toddler to school-age child, Ryan's pride became conditional. When Lucas showed an aptitude for mathematics, Ryan was pleased. When Lucas preferred reading about dinosaurs to playing catch, Ryan was disappointed. "He needs to be well-rounded," he'd say, signing Lucas up for soccer and baseball against his protests. "He'll thank us when he's older and not socially awkward." I remember one Saturday morning when Lucas was 6. He'd been invited to join a weekend math enrichment program at the local university, a rare opportunity for elementary students. The same weekend, Ryan had planned a client golf outing and wanted to show off his son. "He needs to learn how to network," Ryan insisted. "Math will always be there." "This program only accepts 10 kids from the entire district," I countered. "It's an honor." "An honor to be a math geek? That's not going to help him in the real world, Olivia. You're projecting your limited social abilities onto him." Those kinds of comments came more frequently as our marriage progressed. Subtle, at first, then increasingly overt. If I questioned a financial decision, I was overthinking things. If I pointed out that Lucas seemed unhappy in the competitive sports leagues Ryan chose, I was making him soft. If I worked late during tax season, I was neglecting our family. Meanwhile, Ryan's late nights and weekend client meetings multiplied. His assistant Marissa became a constant presence in our conversations. Marissa found a great new restaurant for client dinners. Marissa organized an impressive presentation. Marissa thought we should consider a different investment strategy. I didn't actually suspect they were having an affair until about a year before he left. I'm not naive, just methodical. I need evidence before I form conclusions. The evidence came in small inconsistencies, in changed passwords on our joint accounts, in diminishing intimacy, in Lucas mentioning that Dad's friend from work had been at a restaurant when they had lunch together. But confronting Ryan only led to masterful deflection. He'd turn my concerns around so skillfully that I'd end up apologizing for doubting him. He'd remind me of all the ways I'd failed to be exciting, spontaneous, socially adept. He'd point out how lucky I was that someone with his charisma had chosen someone with my limited emotional range. The night before he left, we had what I thought was a breakthrough conversation. Lucas was asleep, and Ryan actually joined me on the couch instead of retreating to his home office. He asked about my day, seemed interested in a complicated tax problem I'd solved for a client. He even suggested we take a family vacation in the summer, just the 3 of us. I went to bed hopeful that perhaps we were turning a corner. Now I realize he was just setting the stage for his exit, making sure I wouldn't suspect anything until he was ready to deliver his final act of cruelty. After Ryan left that Tuesday morning, Lucas didn't ask many questions. He went to school, came home, did his homework with the same careful attention he always showed. But I noticed changes. He stopped talking about stars and dinosaurs. He began checking his phone constantly, even though at 8, he only had it for emergencies. He started having trouble sleeping. I maintained routines, made his favorite meals, helped with his science project, let him sleep in my bed when nightmares woke him at 2 a.m. Our modest 2-story house in Millbrook wasn't extravagant, but I'd created a home where scientific curiosity was celebrated. Lucas's room had glow-in-the-dark constellations mapped, with astronomical accuracy across the ceiling. His bookshelves were lined with field guides and science encyclopedias. This was our sanctuary, I told myself, even as I wondered how long we could keep it. The first warning that Ryan's exit strategy was more calculated than I realized came when I tried to pay our monthly bills. I logged into our joint account to find it nearly empty, just enough left to cover the mortgage payment, but nothing else. Calls to the bank confirmed my fears. Ryan had systematically transferred funds to private accounts over the previous months. I'm an accountant. I should have noticed. But Ryan had always handled our investments while I managed our household budget. The perfect division of labor, he'd said. Now I realized it had been strategic, keeping me focused on the trees while he rearranged the forest. My emergency fund, the one I'd maintained separately since before we married, the professional habit Ryan had once teased me about, became our lifeline. I had enough saved to keep us afloat for a few months while I figured out next steps. I contacted an attorney, Helen Martinez, who specialized in divorce cases involving financial manipulation. "This happens more often than you'd think," Helen said during our first consultation, reviewing the documents I'd brought. "He's been planning this for at least a year, moving assets gradually to avoid raising flags." "Can we get them back?" I asked. "Some of them, not all." She looked up from the papers. "The judge will likely order temporary support for you and Lucas while we sort this out, but Ryan's clearly prepared for a fight." That's when I learned about the business Ryan had apparently started 3 years earlier, a side investment firm. I knew nothing about, funded partially with our joint resources, but structured to appear independent. On paper, much of our marital wealth had been transformed into business assets that would be complicated to divide. "Did you sign anything for this business? Any partnership papers, loan documents?" Helen asked. I shook my head, then froze. "Wait, there was a refinance on the house last year. Ryan said it was to get a better interest rate. I signed several documents." Helen's expression tightened. "We'll need to review those. He may have used the equity as collateral for his business ventures." The more we dug, the clearer the picture became. Ryan hadn't just been planning to leave me. He'd been systematically ensuring I'd be left with as little as possible. The house I thought was our family home was now leveraged against business loans. The college fund I believed we were building for Lucas had been diverted into private investments under Ryan's name. Through it all, Lucas watched me with quiet, perceptive eyes. I tried to shield him from the worst of it, but children absorb more than we realize. One night, as I was reviewing financial documents at the kitchen table long after I thought he was asleep, I looked up to find him standing in the doorway in his dinosaur pajamas. "Are we going to be okay, Mom?" he asked, his voice small but steady. I closed the folder immediately. "Of course we are, buddy. Some things are changing, but we're going to be fine." He studied my face with that intense focus that could make you forget he was only 8. "Dad doesn't want to be with us anymore, does he?" "Not really." My heart cracked. "Your dad. He's making some choices that are about him, not about us." "But that doesn't change how important you are." Lucas nodded solemnly. He told me I should come live with him and Marissa when they get settled. He said you wouldn't have enough money to take care of me properly. The room seemed to tilt. When did he tell you that? He texts me sometimes. Lucas pulled his phone from his pocket and handed it to me. The emergency phone that was supposed to be for contacting me or calling 911 if needed. I don't answer him much. I scrolled through the messages, each one more manipulative than the last. Ryan telling Lucas that I couldn't afford his science camp anymore. Ryan suggesting that Lucas would have his own room with a better telescope at the new condo. Ryan saying things like, "Mom's just not good with money, buddy. That's why I had to protect our investments." The most recent message, sent just hours earlier, read, "When this is all sorted out, you'll understand why I had to leave. Your mom just can't function in the real world. She needs everything to fit in perfect little boxes." I felt a surge of something beyond anger, a clarity and determination that cut through months of confusion and self-doubt. This wasn't just about money or a failed marriage. This was about a fundamental betrayal of our son. "Lucas," I said carefully, "these messages aren't okay. Your dad shouldn't be putting you in the middle like this." "I know," he said with unexpected composure. "Ms. Phillips talked about manipulation in guidance class last week. This matches the definition." Despite everything, I almost smiled. My son, applying classroom learning to analyze his own difficult situation. "You're right, it is manipulation." "I saved them all," he added, "in case they were important." That night changed everything. I started documenting every communication, every financial discovery, every interaction involving Lucas. I learned that Ryan had been telling Lucas's teachers that our separation was taking a toll on Olivia's mental health, positioning himself as the stable parent while painting me as unstable. He'd even approached Lucas's pediatrician, suggesting that Lucas's occasional anxiety was due to Olivia's emotional dependence on him. The first court date for temporary orders was scheduled for just 2 weeks after I discovered the text messages. Helen advised me that judges typically maintain the status quo during initial hearings, meaning Lucas would likely remain primarily with me, and Ryan would be ordered to provide temporary support while we untangled the financial web he'd created. "But be prepared," Helen warned. "Ryan's going to present himself as the financial provider, the reasonable one, the parent with greater resources to provide for Lucas. We need to focus on your stability and the inappropriate communication with your son." The evening before the hearing, Lucas came to me while I was preparing dinner. He stood in the kitchen entryway, holding his phone with unusual tension. "Mom," he said, his voice unnaturally formal, "I want to come to court tomorrow." I turned from the stove. "Buddy, you don't need to worry about the court stuff. That's for the grown-ups to figure out." "But it's about me too." He stepped forward, his expression serious beyond his years. "Dad sent me something I think the judge should see." He handed me his phone, opened to a message sent from Ryan just 30 minutes earlier. My stomach dropped as I read it. "Lucas, tomorrow there's going to be some boring court stuff. Your mom's lawyer will try to make me look bad because that's what happens in divorces. Just remember who bought your telescope and who can afford to send you to space camp next summer. When you're with me, you'll have opportunities your mom can't provide. Don't let her guilt you into thinking otherwise. This isn't a real hearing anyway, just setting things up for when I get primary custody in a few months." Below that was another message. "Between us, your mom was never cut out for the real world. Too rigid, too focused on rules instead of results. I tried to make it work, but I need a partner who understands ambition. You're different, though. You've got my drive with her attention to detail. Perfect combination. Just stick with me, and you'll go places she never could." The messages continued, each one more inappropriate than the last, culminating in, "Just remember where your future opportunities will come from. Being the nice guy doesn't pay for college, buddy." I looked up from the phone to find Lucas watching me steadily. "I want to show the judge," he said simply. "Dad shouldn't say those things. They're not true about you." I pulled him into a hug, careful not to let him see how deeply Ryan's words had cut me. "We'll talk to Helen about it, okay? She'll know the best way to handle this." That night, after Lucas went to bed, I called Helen and forwarded the messages. Her response was immediate. "This is parental alienation textbook case. I'm filing an emergency motion to include these in tomorrow's hearing." "Lucas wants to speak to the judge," I told her. There was a pause on the line. "That's unusual for a child his age. Most judges prefer not to involve children directly." "I know, but you should see his face, Helen. He feels powerless in all this, and he wants to be heard." "Let's prepare for both possibilities," she suggested. "I'll request permission for him to speak if he wants to, but no pressure either way." The morning of the hearing, Lucas dressed himself in his most formal outfit: khaki pants, a button-down shirt, and the clip-on tie he'd worn to his first piano recital. He combed his hair meticulously and packed his tablet in his backpack, in case the judge wants to see the original messages. I wore a simple navy dress, professional without being flashy. We ate breakfast in near silence, both of us too focused on the day ahead for normal conversation. As we drove to the courthouse, Lucas stared out the window at the familiar streets of Millbrook, his expression contemplative. "You know," I said carefully, "whatever happens today, we're going to be okay." He turned to look at me. "I know. We have evidence." The small family courtroom was less intimidating than I'd imagined, more like a conference room with a raised desk at the front than the dramatic courtrooms on television. Ryan was already there when we arrived, sitting beside his attorney in a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Marissa sat in the row behind them, scrolling through her phone as if this were a routine appointment, rather than the determination of a child's future. Ryan's eyes widened slightly when he saw Lucas walk in with me, then quickly recovered, offering a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, buddy," he called, waving Lucas over. "You didn't need to miss school for this boring stuff." Lucas stayed beside me, his small hand suddenly gripping mine. "I wanted to come," he said simply. Helen met us at our table, eyebrows raised at Lucas's presence but adapting quickly. She knelt to his level. "I've asked the judge if you can speak. Today if you want to. She'll decide when she comes in. Are you sure about this?" Lucas nodded solemnly. "I practiced what I want to say." The bailiff called the room to order as Judge Watkins entered, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed the file before her, then looked up at both tables. "I understand we're here for temporary orders regarding support and custody of Lucas Chen, age 8, she stated. "Before we begin, I see a motion was filed last night regarding communications with the minor child. I've reviewed those messages." Her gaze shifted to Lucas. "And I understand the child is present and wishes to address the court." Ryan's attorney immediately stood. "Your Honor, we object to involving the minor in these proceedings. It's inappropriate and potentially traumatic." Judge Watkins peered over her glasses at him. "Counselor, I've been presiding over family court for 27 years. I'm well aware of when it's appropriate to hear from a child." She turned her attention to Lucas. "Young man, do you still wish to speak today?" Lucas stood, his shoulders squared despite his obvious nervousness. "Yes, Your Honor." "Very well. We'll hear opening statements from counsel first, then I'll make a determination about your participation." What followed was exactly what Helen had prepared me for. Ryan's attorney painted him as the financial provider, the responsible parent, concerned about stability for Lucas. He emphasized Ryan's successful career, his ability to provide advantages for Lucas, and suggested that the marital assets had been used primarily for business investments that benefited the family long-term. He positioned me as financially naive, emotionally dependent on Lucas, and unable to provide the same opportunities Ryan could offer. He even suggested that my rigid personality and obsession with rules was increasing Lucas's anxiety. Each word felt like a physical blow, but I maintained my composure, focusing on Lucas beside me. When Helen's turn came, she methodically laid out the financial documents showing how Ryan had systematically moved assets, leveraged our home, and depleted accounts in preparation for leaving. She presented evidence of his inappropriate communications with Lucas and his attempts to undermine my relationship with our son. Your Honor, she concluded, this is not simply a matter of dividing assets. Mr. Chen has engaged in a calculated effort to leave Ms. Chen and their son with as little as possible, while simultaneously attempting to alienate the child from his mother. The text messages submitted last night are just the latest example of this troubling pattern. Judge Watkins reviewed her notes, then looked directly at Lucas. I've decided to hear from Lucas briefly. Given his age, I'll ask questions rather than having him give a statement. Is that acceptable to you, young man? Lucas nodded, standing. Again. Yes, Your Honor. Please come forward then. Lucas walked to the front of the courtroom, his steps measured and deliberate. He stood before the judge's bench, looking small but determined. Judge Watkins smiled kindly at him. Lucas, I've read some messages that your father sent to you. Do you want to tell me about those? Lucas glanced once at Ryan, then back to the judge. My dad sent me messages saying Mom couldn't take care of me properly because she doesn't have enough money. He said I should live with him because he could buy me better things. How did those messages make you feel? Confused at first, then sad. Lucas's voice remained steady. My dad knows Mom is good with money. She's an accountant, and she takes really good care of me. It felt like he was making up stories. Is there anything specific in the messages you want me to know about? Lucas hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote down the one that bothered me most. Can I read it? The judge nodded. Go ahead. Lucas unfolded the paper and read clearly. Your mom is just temporary until we get this sorted out. Remember who's really going to secure your future. Some people are just stepping stones, buddy. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Marissa suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. When did you receive this message? Judge Watkins asked gently. Last night at 9:43 p.m., Lucas answered with precise recall. I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard my phone buzz. And why did this particular message bother you? Lucas looked directly at the judge, his young face solemn. Because my mom isn't a stepping stone. She's my mom, and she's not temporary. He paused, then added with simple clarity. I don't need space camp or expensive telescopes. I just need her to not be called names or made to feel bad. The courtroom fell completely silent. Judge Watkins studied Lucas for a long moment, then nodded. Thank you for your honesty, Lucas. You may return to your seat now. As Lucas walked back toward me, his shoulders relaxed slightly. I squeezed his hand when he sat down, whispering, I'm so proud of you. Judge Watkins removed her glasses, her expression stern as she addressed the court. I've seen enough to make temporary rulings today. First, Mr. Chen is ordered to provide immediate financial disclosures of all accounts, investments, and business interests within 72 hours. Second, the court is implementing a temporary freeze on all identified marital assets pending full financial discovery. She turned her attention directly to Ryan. Mr. Chen, these text messages to your son are completely inappropriate and constitute textbook parental alienation. Effective immediately, all communication with the minor child will take place through the Our Family Wizard app, which records and monitors parental communications. Ryan's attorney started to object, but Judge Watkins held up her hand. I'm not finished, counselor. Given the evidence of financial manipulation and inappropriate communications, temporary primary physical custody is awarded to Ms. Chen with Mr. Chen to have supervised visitation every other weekend pending a full hearing and possible psychological evaluation. The relief that washed over me was indescribable. Lucas leaned against my side, his small body finally relaxing. Furthermore, Judge Watkins continued, Mr. Chen is ordered to provide temporary support of $2,500 monthly to maintain the household expenses for Ms. Chen and Lucas, effective immediately. The court will revisit these orders when full financial disclosure has been completed. She gathered her papers with finality. This hearing is adjourned until June 3rd, when we will review compliance with these orders and potentially set a trial date if matters cannot be resolved. As the judge left the courtroom, Ryan remained seated, his confident facade finally cracking. His attorney leaned in, speaking urgently in his ear. Marissa had already slipped out the back door. I turned to Lucas, shielding him from Ryan's glare. You did amazingly well. He looked up at me with those perceptive eyes. I just told the truth, Mom. Then, with the resilience only children possess, he added, Can we get ice cream on the way home? I smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. Absolutely. We didn't discuss the courtroom on the drive to the ice cream shop. Lucas switched the radio to his favorite station and watched the familiar streets of Millbrook pass by as if nothing extraordinary had just happened, as if he hadn't just stood before a judge and changed the course of our future with his courage and honesty. But that's often how strength works. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It simply does what needs to be done, then asks for ice cream. The ice cream shop was Lucas's favorite place in Millbrook, a family-owned parlor with hand-painted constellations on the ceiling and science trivia questions printed on the napkins. He ordered his usual, mint chocolate chip with extra chocolate, shavings, while I chose vanilla bean, something I could actually taste despite the emotional numbness that had settled over me since the hearing. We sat by the window, watching people stroll past on Main Street, ordinary lives continuing while ours had been completely upended. Lucas methodically worked through his ice cream, occasionally glancing at me with those observant eyes that seemed to absorb everything. Mom, he said finally, setting down his spoon. Did I do the right thing? The question caught me off guard. In court? Absolutely. Dad's really angry. He already texted 6 times, but I didn't open them. Lucas pushed his ice cream bowl slightly away. What happens now? I reached across the table and took his hand. Now we take things one day at a time. Dad has to follow the judge's rules, which means he can only contact you through that special app she mentioned, and we'll figure out our new normal. Lucas nodded solemnly. Will we have to move? I heard you talking to Helen about the house. Sometimes I forgot how much he absorbed, how carefully he pieced together fragments of adult conversations. I don't know yet, buddy. The judge put a freeze on things, which means we can stay for now. But eventually, we might need to find somewhere smaller. As long as I can bring my telescope and books. He picked up his spoon again, returning to his ice cream with renewed purpose. That simple statement, his willingness to adapt as long as his passion for knowledge remained supported, nearly brought me to tears. While Ryan and I had been battling over accounts and assets, Lucas had already determined what truly mattered to him. We finished our ice cream and headed home, the weight of the morning's events finally catching up to me. Lucas asked if he could skip his afternoon classes and stay home instead. For once, I didn't hesitate about breaking routine. We both needed the comfort of each other's company more than he needed to complete a fraction worksheet. When we pulled into our driveway, I noticed a sleek black car parked across the street. Ryan's new BMW, the one he'd purchased just weeks before leaving. He was leaning against it, arms crossed, waiting. Stay in the car, I told Lucas, squeezing his hand reassuringly before stepping out. Ryan pushed himself away from his vehicle and approached, stopping a few feet away. His tailored suit had lost some of its crispness after the morning in court, but his expression remained controlled, calculating. That was quite a performance, he said, voice low enough that Lucas couldn't hear through the car windows. Having our son do your dirty work. I didn't ask him to speak, I replied, keeping my voice steady. He wanted to. Those were his words. Ryan, not mine. Right. He laughed without humor. An 8-year-old just happened to analyze text messages and present them perfectly to make me look bad. The messages made you look bad all by themselves. I glanced back at Lucas, who was watching us intently from the car. What do you want? The judge ordered supervised visitation only. Ryan's jaw tightened. This isn't over, Olivia. Not by a long shot. You think you've won because some family court judge got emotional over a kid's rehearsed speech? My attorney is already preparing an appeal. You sent those messages, Ryan, to our child. No one made you do that. He stepped closer, lowering his voice further. You've always been so naive about how the world works. This is just a setback. When the full financial picture comes out, when the court sees your complete inability to provide the kind of life I can offer Lucas, stop. I met his gaze directly. The judge ordered all communications through the app. That includes this conversation. If you have something to say, put it in writing through the proper channels. Something flickered across his face. Frustration? Perhaps at my newfound assertiveness. The old Olivia would have listened, would have doubted herself, would have tried to appease him. Fine. He stepped back. But tell Lucas I expect a call tonight. Supervised doesn't mean no contact. Actually, it does mean exactly that until the supervisor is arranged. Read the order, Ryan. He glanced at Lucas in the car, gave a tight smile and wave that didn't reach his eyes, then returned to his BMW without another word. I watched him drive away before returning to the car. What did Dad want? Lucas asked as we walked toward the house. Just to talk. I unlocked the front door. He's still processing what happened in court. Lucas nodded with that preternatural understanding. He's angry, but pretending not to be. That's when his smile looks different. I stopped in the entryway, struck once again by how perceptive my son was, how much he had been observing and cataloging throughout his young life. You're right. How did you get so smart? He shrugged. I pay attention to patterns, like in math. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Lucas built an elaborate structure with his Lego blocks while I made calls to my office to arrange extended leave, to our bank to discuss the judge's freezing order, to Helen to review next steps. By evening, the emotional and physical exhaustion caught up with both of us. We ordered pizza, watched a documentary about deep-sea creatures, and went to bed early. The next morning brought reality crashing back in full force. An email from my bank confirmed what I'd feared. The judge's order had come too late to prevent Ryan's most recent transfers. Our joint accounts were nearly depleted. The emergency freeze protected what little remained and prevented further action, but the damage was substantial. We have enough for 3 months, maybe 4 if we're careful, I told Helen during our morning call while Lucas was in the shower. After that, I don't know. The support order will help, she replied. And once we complete discovery, we'll have a clearer picture of what he's hidden. In the meantime, could you increase your hours at the firm? I'm trying, but tax season is ending. They're cutting back hours, not adding them. I rubbed my temples, fighting a growing headache. I'll figure something out. After I dropped Lucas at school, where he insisted on going despite my offer to let him stay home another day, I drove to the bank to meet with the financial advisor who had handled our accounts for years. James Peterson had always dealt primarily with Ryan, but I needed answers only he might have. I'm sorry, Olivia, James said after reviewing the transaction history I was now legally entitled to see. Ryan began moving funds systematically about 14 months ago. Small amounts at first, then larger transfers in recent months. 14 months, while we were still taking family vacations, while Ryan was still kissing me goodbye each morning. The betrayal had been meticulously planned while he maintained the facade of our marriage. "Where did the money go?" I asked. James hesitated. "Multiple destinations, some to his business accounts, some to personal accounts I'm not familiar with. There was a significant transfer to an offshore account approximately 3 months ago." "Offshore?" My accountant's mind immediately recognized what this meant. Funds deliberately placed beyond easy reach of you. Escorts. "Yes. I questioned it at the time, but Ryan provided documentation that it was for an international investment opportunity. Everything appeared legitimate." "Did I sign anything authorizing these transfers?" James looked uncomfortable. "For most of them, no. But there was documentation showing your consent for the larger movements. Your signature appears on several forms." "May I see those forms?" My voice remained calm despite the churning in my stomach. He pulled several documents from a folder. There, indeed, was what appeared to be my signature on multiple forms. Except I had never seen these documents before, never authorized these transfers. "I didn't sign these," I said quietly. James's expression shifted from discomfort to alarm. "Are you certain?" "These came through proper channels with verification." "I'm positive. That's not my signature. It's close, but the O in Olivia is wrong, and I never loop my Y like that." Years of reviewing financial documents had made me intimately familiar with the nuances of signatures, including my own. James went pale. "Mrs. Chen, if what you're saying is true, this is a serious matter involving fraud." "I'm aware." My mind was already racing ahead, professional training kicking in despite personal shock. "I need copies of everything. All transaction records, all signed authorizations, everything for the past 2 years. I'll need to consult with our legal department first. Of course. Please let them know that I'll be reporting this to the court immediately as part of ongoing divorce proceedings, and that my attorney will be following up with a formal request." I stood, gathering my purse. "And James, if anyone contacts you about this meeting, particularly Ryan or his attorney, I trust you'll maintain appropriate confidentiality." He nodded, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Of course." I called Helen from the parking lot, my hands shaking slightly as I started the car. "I need you to file an emergency motion with the court. Ryan forged my signature on banking documents." "Are you certain?" Her voice sharpened with professional interest. "Absolutely. Multiple documents, significant transfers, including offshore accounts. I've requested copies, but the bank is consulting with their legal department first." "This changes things significantly," Helen said. "Forgery elevates this from financial maneuvering to potential criminal activity. I'll draft the motion immediately and request an emergency hearing." By the time I picked Lucas up from school that afternoon, events were already in motion. Helen had filed emergency papers with the court, requesting both an immediate hearing and potential referral to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. The bank had contacted me to confirm they were preparing the requested documents. And Ryan had sent 7 increasingly agitated messages through the court-ordered communication app, demanding to know why his accounts had been flagged for potential fraud. Lucas climbed into the car with his usual careful movements, buckling his seatbelt before even looking at me. "You look different, Mom," he observed. "Did something happen?" I smiled despite everything. "Just a busy day. How was school?" "Fine. Ms. Harper asked why I was in court yesterday. I told her it was family business." He looked out the window, then added, "Zach said his dad told him that my dad moved away because you're difficult to live with. Is that true?" The casual cruelty of the comment hit like a physical blow. "No, Lucas, that's not true, and I'm sorry Zach said that to you." "I told him he was wrong," Lucas replied matter-of-factly. "I said Dad left because he wanted to be with Marissa and didn't want to share his money. Zach didn't know what to say after that." I nearly swerved the car in surprise. Lucas, It's okay, Mom. I know we're not supposed to talk about family stuff at school, but he started it. He looked at me with those serious eyes. And it's the truth, isn't it? It's complicated, buddy. But yes, those are factors in why Dad left. Lucas nodded, satisfied with the confirmation. Can we have spaghetti tonight? I have a lot of math homework. The abrupt topic change, so characteristic of children his age, brought a small smile to my face despite everything. Spaghetti sounds perfect. That evening, after Lucas was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table reviewing our financial situation. With Ryan's support payments and my salary, we could maintain the mortgage for now, but other expenses would need to be cut drastically. Lucas's advanced science camp for the summer, already paid in full, thankfully. His therapy sessions, essential, not negotiable. My own therapy, newly necessary, but would have to wait. The house phone rang, startling me. Few people used that number anymore. Hello? Olivia, it's Sharon Matthews. Ryan's mother's voice came through crisp and disapproving as always. I braced myself. Hello, Sharon. It's rather late for a call. Well, I wouldn't need to call at all if you were being reasonable. Her tone carried the same condescension it had since the day Ryan introduced us 8 years ago. What exactly do you think you're doing, accusing my son of forgery? Do you have any idea what this could do to his career? Of course Ryan had, called his mother. He always did when he felt cornered. I'm not discussing legal matters with you, Sharon. If Ryan has concerns, he can have his attorney contact mine. Don't take that tone with me, young lady. We both know what this is really about. You couldn't keep my son happy, and now you're punishing him for finding someone who could. I took a slow breath. Is there something specific you needed, Sharon? It's late, and I have work in the morning. What I need is for you to stop this vindictive campaign. Ryan has always been generous with you, far more than you deserved. He's willing to provide for Lucas, but these false accusations and court manipulations need to stop. I'm hanging up now. Please don't call again. I set the phone down before she could respond, then unplugged it from the wall for good measure. Sharon had never approved of me, the practical accountant who didn't match her country club aspirations for her only son. She'd made that clear from the beginning, though she'd maintained a veneer of politeness until Lucas was born. After that, her criticism became more overt, with constant suggestions about how I should dress, how I should entertain, how I was raising Lucas too academically and not focusing enough on social connections. My phone buzzed with a text message alert. Helen. Emergency hearing granted. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Can you arrange childcare for Lucas? I texted back confirming I would make arrangements, then sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at the schedule on the refrigerator that still showed all 3 of our names, all the activities and appointments that had constituted our family life. Ryan's column was now meaningless. Tennis lessons he would never take Lucas to, dinner with clients that would never include me, the anniversary date he had presumably planned to skip regardless. The next morning brought an unexpected complication. Lucas woke with a low-grade fever and sore throat. Nothing serious, but enough that school was out of the question. I called my neighbor Eleanor, a retired teacher who had occasionally watched Lucas after school. Of course I can stay with him, she said after I explained the situation. Court matters can't be rescheduled easily. Bring him over with his books and games, and we'll have a quiet day. You're a lifesaver, Eleanor. I gathered Lucas's medication, favorite books, and tablet while he ate a small breakfast. How are you feeling, buddy? Scratchy, he said, touching his throat. But not too bad. Will you be gone long? Just the afternoon. It's more of those boring court things we talked about. I felt a pang of guilt for the half-truth. Hearing today was anything but boring. It could potentially change everything. Lucas nodded, accepting the explanation without question. Can I bring my astronomy encyclopedia to Ms. Eleanor's? We're working on identifying constellations. Absolutely. I helped him pack his backpack with books, his favorite stuffed stegosaurus, and the special honey throat lozenges the pediatrician had recommended. After settling Lucas at Eleanor's with promises to return as soon as possible, I drove downtown to meet Helen at the courthouse. She was waiting on the steps, briefcase in hand, her expression professionally neutral. The bank delivered the documents. This morning, via courier, she said as we walked in. Definitive evidence of forgery on at least 7 major transfers. The judge has also granted our request for a forensic accountant to review all financial records. What about Ryan? Will he be here? His attorney filed an emergency response claiming this is all a misunderstanding, that you had given verbal authorization for the transfers. But yes, he's required to appear. We entered the same courtroom as before, though it felt different without Lucas beside me. Ryan was already there with his attorney, engaged in intense, whispered conversation. He glanced up when we entered, his expression flickering between anger and something that might have been fear, before settling into practiced neutrality. Judge Watkins entered promptly at 2 p.m., reviewing the file before addressing the court. We're here on an emergency motion regarding potential financial fraud in the Chen divorce proceedings. Let me be clear that this court takes such allegations extremely seriously. She looked directly at Ryan. Mr. Chen, your wife has presented evidence suggesting you forged her signature on multiple financial documents to transfer marital assets. Do you understand the gravity of these allegations? Ryan's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client categorically denies any forgery. Mrs. Chen was aware of and verbally approved these transactions, which were standard investment procedures for the family's financial benefit. The judge raised an eyebrow. Verbal approval for offshore transfers of substantial sums? That seems irregular for financial professionals. The Chen family has always operated with significant trust and flexibility in their financial arrangements. The attorney continued smoothly. Mr. Chen handled investments while Mrs. Chen managed household accounts. This division of responsibility was established early in their marriage. I fought to keep my expression neutral as the attorney painted a picture of financial arrangements that bore little resemblance to reality. Yes, Ryan had handled investments, but I had never given verbal approval for anything resembling what he had done. Helen stood when invited to respond. Your Honor, the documents speak for themselves. Mrs. Chen, as a financial professional, is intimately familiar with her own signature. The bank has already flagged these transactions as potentially fraudulent based on her report. Furthermore, the timing of these transfers, beginning precisely when Mr. Chen initiated his relationship with his current partner and accelerating in the months before he left the marriage, suggests deliberate intent to remove assets from the marital estate. Judge Watkins reviewed the documents before her. I've examined the signatures in question, and even to my untrained eye, there appear to be discrepancies. The court is ordering immediate forensic analysis of these documents to be completed within 5 business days. She turned to Ryan, her expression severe. Mr. Chen, pending the results of this analysis, the court is extending the freeze on all identified assets and accounts, including those registered solely in your name if they were funded with marital assets. You are ordered to provide a complete accounting of all transfers made within the past 18 months, including full documentation of destinations and current status of funds. Ryan's attorney started to object, but the judge continued. Additionally, the court is ordering a significant expansion of the financial disclosure requirements. Mr. Chen, you will provide complete records of all business entities, investment vehicles, and personal accounts, domestic and international, within 7 days. Failure to comply will result in significant sanctions, possibly including contempt charges. She looked between us, her expression grave. Depending on the forensic results, this court may refer this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal investigation. Financial fraud is not merely a divorce issue. It potentially constitutes criminal forgery and theft. The remainder of the hearing passed in a blur of legal terminology and scheduling. A forensic accountant was appointed. A follow-up hearing was set for the following week. Ryan was ordered to surrender his passport to the court as a precaution against flight risk, a measure his attorney protested vigorously but unsuccessfully. Throughout it all, Ryan maintained his composure, though I noticed the slight tightening around his eyes, the occasional clenching of his jaw. He didn't look at me directly, instead focusing intently on his attorney or the judge. As the hearing concluded, I overheard his attorney whispering urgently, "We need to discuss settlement options immediately." In the hallway afterward, Helen was cautiously optimistic. The judge clearly has concerns about the evidence. The passport surrender is particularly significant. Judges don't take that step unless they see genuine flight risk. "What happens now?" I asked, still processing. "We wait for the forensic report, but we also prepare. The expanded financial discovery should reveal where the money went. In the meantime, Ryan's attorney will almost certainly approach us about settlement." "Why would they settle if they're claiming innocence?" Helen gave me a knowing look. "Because forgery charges can end careers, especially in financial services. Ryan has far more to lose now than just marital assets." She wasn't wrong. That evening, after retrieving Lucas from Eleanor's and getting him settled with dinner and medication, I received an email from Ryan's attorney requesting a meeting to discuss potential resolution of outstanding issues. The tone was markedly different from previous communications, less aggressive, more conciliatory. Lucas was quiet during dinner, his fever making him more subdued than usual. "Mom," he said as I tucked him into bed, "is Dad in trouble? I heard you talking to Ms. Helen on the phone." I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. "There are some financial issues that the court is looking into, adult stuff." He nodded slowly. "Because of the money he took? I heard you talking about that too." Sometimes I forgot how much Lucas absorbed, how carefully he pieced together fragments of adult conversations. "Yes, partly because of that. But you don't need to worry about it. The judge and the lawyers are sorting it out." "Is that why Dad hasn't tried to see me? Because he's in trouble?" The question caught me off guard. "The judge ordered supervised visitation. That takes time to arrange." Lucas looked down at his hands. He hasn't even called, though, on the app thing. The realization that Lucas had noticed this absence, had perhaps been waiting for contact that never came, broke my heart all over again. "I think he's been very busy with the court stuff, buddy. I'm sure he'll reach out soon." Lucas shrugged, his expression too knowing for his years. "It's okay. I'm not sure I want to talk to him right now anyway." He pulled his covers up higher. "Can you leave the star projector on tonight?" I turned on the small device that scattered constellations across his ceiling and walls. "Of course. Need anything else?" He shook his head, his eyelids already growing heavy with medication and fatigue. "Just checking on the whole Dad thing. Wanted to get my data straight." Data straight. Such a Lucas phrase. Approaching emotional questions with the analytical mindset that made him special. I kissed his forehead, still slightly warm, and left, his door ajar as I headed back downstairs. I spent the evening reviewing the bank documents, my professional training allowing me to spot discrepancies and patterns that might have escaped notice otherwise. Ryan had been methodical, moving funds in increasingly larger amounts as his exit strategy progressed. The forged signatures were good. Not perfect, but good enough to pass a banker's cursory glance, especially when the banker knew Ryan well and had no reason to suspect deception. The following morning, while Lucas rested on the couch with his books and still-present fever, I received a call from James at the bank. "Olivia, I wanted to let you know that our internal investigation has confirmed the signatures appear to be inconsistent with our records of your verified signature. We've flagged all the accounts and provided the requested documentation to the court-appointed examiner." Thank you, James. I appreciate your thoroughness. There was a pause before he continued. There's something else you should know. Ryan came to the bank yesterday afternoon after your court hearing. He attempted to access the safety deposit box you hold jointly. My pulse quickened. Did he succeed? No. All joint assets are frozen per the court order. But he was quite insistent. Security had to be called. The image of Ryan, always so controlled, so measured, becoming disruptive enough to require security intervention was jarring. Did he say what he wanted from the box? No. But after he left, I took the liberty of checking our records. The last access to that box was 3 months ago, by Ryan alone. The safety deposit box had been established when Lucas was born. It contained his birth certificate, our marriage license, some family jewelry, and various important documents. I hadn't accessed it in at least a year. What could Ryan have placed there 3 months ago that would be important enough to risk a scene trying to retrieve it? I'd like to access the box, I said. Is that possible given the freeze? With court permission? Yes. You would need specific authorization from the judge. I thanked him and immediately called Helen, explaining the situation. We need to know what's in that box. If Ryan was willing to create a scene to access it after the hearing, it must contain something significant. I agree. I'll file the key. Motion immediately. Given the circumstances and the evidence of potential fraud, the judge should grant access quickly. The next few days passed in a blur of legal activity. Lucas recovered from his fever and returned to school. Ryan, through his attorney, began floating settlement proposals, each offering more than the last, but all contingent on dropping the forgery allegations. The forensic examination of the bank documents proceeded, with preliminary findings supporting my claims of forgery. On Friday afternoon, 4 days after the emergency hearing, I received court permission to access the safety deposit box, with a court officer present to inventory the contents. Helen arranged for me to go to the bank that same day. The box contained the expected documents, birth certificates, insurance policies, our marriage license. It also contained an anniversary ring Ryan had given me years earlier, which I had rarely worn due to its impracticality during daily parenting. But beneath these familiar items lay something unexpected. A leather portfolio containing incorporation documents for an entity called Orion Holdings LLC, established 14 months earlier in Nevada. The court officer carefully cataloged each document while I examined the incorporation papers. Orion Holdings was registered solely in Ryan's name, with Marissa listed as an officer of the company. The documentation showed initial capitalization of $50,000, approximately when the first unexplained transfers from our joint accounts began. But the most damning document was at the bottom of the stack, a property deed for a beachfront condominium in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, purchased 6 months earlier for $2 million. The property was registered to Orion Holdings LLC with no mention of Ryan's name directly, creating a layer of separation that would have made it difficult to discover through normal divorce proceedings. The court officer photographed each document. "These will be submitted to the judge immediately," she said, professional but clearly recognizing the significance of what we'd found. I left the bank in a daze, calling Helen from the parking lot. We found it, at least part of it. A property in Mexico, held through a shell company he created over a year ago. Marissa is listed as an officer. Helen's voice was cautiously triumphant. This is exactly what we needed. Property hidden through corporate structures, purchased, with marital funds during the marriage, with deliberate steps taken to conceal it from you and eventually the court. I'll notify the judge immediately and request inclusion in the forensic accounting. That evening, as Lucas and I worked on his science project at the kitchen table, my phone rang with an unknown number. Stepping into the living room to answer, I was surprised to hear Marissa's voice. "Olivia." She sounded tense, lacking the smugness from that morning in my kitchen. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you, Marissa. Any communication should go through our attorneys. This isn't about the divorce, or It is, but... She paused. Ryan isn't who you think he is. Who I thought he was either. Something? In her tone, a combination of fear and resignation made me hesitate before hanging up. What do you mean? The money, the property in Mexico, the offshore accounts? I knew about some of it, but not all. Not how he got it. He told me you had agreed to the investments, that you just weren't interested in the details. And you believed that? I believed him, she said simply. I was wrong. I sat down on the couch, processing this unexpected conversation. Why are you calling me Marissa? Because the forensic accountant is going to find things that go beyond just hiding marital assets. Things that could potentially be problematic for anyone associated with the accounts, including me. What kinds of things? She hesitated. I can't say more on the phone, but Ryan isn't just moving money around to keep it from you. There's more going on. I've already spoken with my own attorney, and they've advised me to distance myself from the situation. Are you saying Ryan is involved in illegal activities beyond the forgery? I'm saying you should make sure the forensic accountant looks very carefully at the client funds Ryan has been managing, especially over the past 18 months. Her voice dropped lower. I have to go. He doesn't know I called you. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone, mind racing with implications. If Marissa was suggesting what I thought, that Ryan had potentially misappropriated client funds along with marital assets, this went far beyond our divorce. It could involve securities fraud, embezzlement, serious criminal charges. I sat frozen on the couch long after Marissa hung up, her words echoing in my mind. Client funds, securities fraud. The implications were staggering, not just for our divorce proceedings, but potentially for dozens of investors who had trusted Ryan with their financial futures. If what she was suggesting was true, this went far beyond hiding assets from me. It could mean criminal charges, even prison time. The sound of Lucas's voice pulled me back to the present. Mom? I'm stuck on this part. He stood in the doorway, holding his science project notebook, completely unaware of how his world might be about to change yet again. Comin', buddy. I tucked my phone away and followed him back to the kitchen table, compartmentalizing as best I could. Whatever Ryan might have done, Lucas needed stability now more than ever. After getting Lucas to bed, I called Helen, relaying Marissa's cryptic warning without embellishment. She specifically mentioned client funds being mismanaged over the past 18 months, I concluded, and she seemed genuinely concerned about being implicated. Helen's response was measured but serious. If there's evidence of securities fraud or embezzlement, we're moving into an entirely different legal territory. The divorce proceedings would become almost secondary to potential criminal investigations. Should we notify the forensic accountant about this, or the SEC directly? Let's start with the accountant. Frank Dawson is very thorough, and he has experience working with regulatory agencies. If he finds anything suspicious, he has an obligation to report it. In the meantime, I'll draft a letter to the judge requesting expanded scope for his investigation, specifically citing concerns about commingling of client and personal funds. The next morning, Saturday, I woke early despite the weekend, my mind still racing with possibilities and implications. Lucas slept in, exhausted from his week back at school after his illness. I sat at the kitchen counter with coffee, reviewing my own finances with the eye of a professional, separating emotion from the analytical process that had always brought me clarity. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meeting. My attorney today will provide information about Orion Holdings and other entities. Don't contact me. M. Marissa again. Her apparent willingness to turn on Ryan so quickly was surprising, but self-preservation was a powerful motivator. If she had unwittingly become entangled in financial impropriety, she would be looking for any way to protect herself. I forwarded the message to Helen without comment, then returned to my financial analysis. While Ryan had systematically drained our joint accounts and investments, he hadn't been able to touch my retirement accounts or the small inheritance from my grandmother that I'd kept separate. It wasn't enough for long-term security, but it provided a cushion that many divorcing spouses didn't have. Lucas wandered into the kitchen around 9, still in his dinosaur pajamas, his hair tousled from sleep. "Can we make pancakes?" he asked, climbing onto a stool at the counter. "Absolutely." I closed my laptop, grateful for the distraction. "Chocolate chip or blueberry?" "Both?" He gave me a hopeful smile, the first genuine one I'd seen in days. "Ambitious. I like it." I gathered ingredients while Lucas set the table, his methodical nature evident in the perfect alignment of forks and napkins. As we mixed batter and heated the griddle, Lucas seemed to be working up to something, his expression thoughtful. Finally, while watching chocolate chips melt into the cooking pancakes, he asked, "Mom, are we poor now?" The question caught me off guard. "What makes—" "You asked that?" He shrugged, eyes still on the pancakes. "Dad texted that we might have to move because you can't afford our house anymore. And Zach's mom told him that divorce is expensive and kids usually have to give up things they're used to." I turned to face him fully, pancakes momentarily forgotten. "Lucas, look at me." I waited until his eyes met mine. "We're not poor. Things are changing, and yes, we might need to make some adjustments, but you will always have everything you need. I promise." "What about space camp this summer?" Dad said. "Space camp is already paid for. You're going." I turned back to rescue the pancakes, flipping them with perhaps more force than necessary. "And in the future, if Dad tells you something about our finances that worries you, please talk to me about it first. Sometimes he doesn't have all the information." Lucas nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Can I put extra chocolate chips on top too?" "Now you're just pushing your luck," I said with a smile, but slid the bag of chocolate chips toward him anyway. After breakfast, we spent the morning at the local science museum, a welcome normalcy amid the chaos our lives had become. Lucas moved from exhibit to exhibit with his usual careful attention, taking notes in the small spiral notebook he always carried. Watching him explain the principles of momentum to a younger child with patient clarity, I felt a surge of pride so intense it almost overwhelmed me. This remarkable, thoughtful child was what mattered, not bank accounts or property deeds or Ryan's betrayals. Whatever happened with the investigations and court proceedings, I would make sure Lucas remained protected and secure in the knowledge that he was loved unconditionally. My phone buzzed with a call from Helen as we were leaving the museum. I stepped aside while Lucas examined a display of polished geodes in the gift shop. "The judge has approved our request for expanded scope in the forensic investigation," Helen said without preamble. "And there's more. Marissa's attorney contacted me directly. She's offering to provide documentation regarding Ryan's financial activities in exchange for immunity from any potential proceedings." "Immunity? That suggests she believes there's criminal activity to be found." "Exactly. The DA's office has been notified, though no formal investigation has been opened yet. They're waiting on the forensic accountant's preliminary findings." "When will those be ready?" "Monday or Tuesday. Frank is working through the weekend given the new developments." Helen paused. "Olivia, you should prepare yourself. If Ryan has been misappropriating client funds, this could become very public, very quickly. Financial fraud cases often make headlines, especially when they involve well-known investment advisors." The implications for Lucas hit me immediately. How do I protect Lucas from that kind of exposure? He's already dealing with so much. Document everything Ryan communicates to him. Continue using the court-mandated app exclusively. and consider speaking with his therapist about how to prepare him if this does become public. After hanging up, I watched Lucas carefully selecting a small quartz crystal with his museum gift shop allowance. His childhood was already being shaped by adult failures and betrayals. The prospect of adding a public scandal and potential criminal prosecution of his father to that burden seemed unimaginably cruel. When we returned home, there was a sleek black car parked across the street, Ryan's BMW again. This time he was standing on our front porch, pacing impatiently. "Stay in the car a minute, Lucas," I said, squeezing his shoulder gently before stepping out. Ryan turned as I approached, his perfectly tailored appearance now showing signs of strain. Slight. Shadows under his eyes, hair less precisely styled than usual. "We need to talk," he said without greeting. "Privately." "Any communication should go through our attorneys, Ryan. You know that." "This can't wait for attorneys." He glanced at the car where Lucas was watching us. "It's important." Something in his tone, an urgency I hadn't heard before, made me hesitate. 5 minutes, on the porch only. Lucas can go inside. I motioned for Lucas to come out of the car. He approached cautiously, backpack clutched to his chest like a shield. "Hi, Dad," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Hey, buddy." Ryan's expression softened momentarily. "Got something cool at the museum?" Lucas nodded, not elaborating. "Can I go inside, Mom? I want to add my crystal to my collection." "Of course." I unlocked the front door, watching him slip inside before turning back to Ryan. 5 minutes. Ryan waited until the door closed. "Marissa is talking to the DA's office. She's making a deal." "I'm aware." "No, you don't understand." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of agitation I'd rarely seen from him. "She's lying, trying to save herself by inventing stories about me. She was the one handling the client accounts in question. I trusted her, and she's been skimming for over a year." I studied his face, looking for the tells I'd learned to recognize during our marriage. The slight tightening around his eyes when he was constructing a narrative. The almost imperceptible lift of his chin when establishing dominance in a conversation. "If that's true, you should be talking to your attorney and the authorities, not me. I'm talking to you because this affects Lucas. When this becomes public, and it will, it's going to be messy. I need to know you'll protect him from the fallout." "I've been protecting him since the day you walked out," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "That's not going to change." Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There's more money. Accounts she doesn't know about. Legitimate investments that could secure Lucas's future. I can make sure he's taken care of, regardless of what happens with the investigations." "Are you seriously trying to hide more assets? Now, with forensic accountants and possibly the DA looking into your finances?" "Not hiding, protecting. For Lucas." His expression was earnest, persuasive, the same look he'd used to convince clients to invest in high-risk opportunities. "I made mistakes, Olivia, I know that. But I've always wanted what's best for him." The front door opened slightly and Lucas peered out. "Mom, is everything okay?" Ryan immediately stepped back, his expression shifting to casual normalcy with practiced ease. "Everything's fine, buddy. Just talking with your mom about boring adult stuff." Lucas looked between us, clearly unconvinced. "Ms. Eleanor is calling you, Mom. She says it's important." Eleanor wouldn't interrupt unless it actually was important. "I need to take that, Ryan. Your 5 minutes are up anyway. Just think about what I said." Ryan moved toward his car, then turned back. "Lucas, I'm going to set up our first supervised visit soon. Would you like that?" Lucas shrugged, his face carefully blank in a way that broke my heart. "I guess, if I don't have homework." Ryan's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Sure thing, buddy. School comes first, right?" Without waiting for a response, he got into his car and drove away. Inside, Eleanor was indeed on the phone, but not for the reason Lucas had implied. "I'm so sorry to bother you on a Saturday," she said. "But I thought you should know. There was a man asking questions about you in the neighborhood this morning. He claimed to be from your bank, conducting a customer satisfaction survey, but he was asking very specific questions about your schedule and when you're typically away from home." A chill ran through me. "Did you get his name?" "No, but I didn't like the feel of it, so I told him I didn't know you well. Martha down the street said he asked her similar questions. She thought it was odd enough that she took a photo of his car as he left." Eleanor paused. "I don't want to alarm you, but with everything going on with your divorce, you were right to call me. Thank you, Eleanor." After hanging up, I found Lucas arranging his new crystal with his collection, organizing them by type and color with precise care. "Lucas, did you really hear Ms. Eleanor calling? Or was that to help me end the conversation with Dad?" He looked up, his expression serious. "You seemed uncomfortable, and Dad was standing too close, so I made up a reason for you to come inside." He returned to adjusting a piece of rose quartz. "Was that okay?" I sat on the edge of his bed, watching this small, perceptive person who understood interpersonal dynamics better than many adults. "It was very thoughtful, but you don't need to protect me from Dad, okay? That's my job, protecting you." "Sometimes people can help each other at the same time," he replied with simple wisdom. "That's what you always say about teamwork." I couldn't argue with my own words being used against me. "You're right. Thank you for being on my team." That evening, after Lucas was asleep, I forwarded Eleanor's information to Helen along with a detailed account of Ryan's visit. Her response was immediate. "Filing for a temporary restraining order first thing Monday morning. Please document any further contact attempts. Consider staying elsewhere this weekend if possible." The suggestion that we might not be safe in our own home was jarring, but I couldn't dismiss it. Ryan was facing potential financial ruin and criminal charges. If he was desperate enough to approach me directly despite court orders, what else might he do? I packed overnight bags for Lucas and myself, telling him we were having an impromptu sleepover at my college friend Diane's house across town. He accepted the explanation with minimal questions, more excited about Diane's golden retriever puppy than concerned about the sudden change in plans. Diane, one of the few friends who had remained firmly in my corner after the separation, welcomed us with open arms and asked no questions when I explained we needed to stay for the weekend. Her guest room had twin beds, perfect for Lucas and me, and her home in a gated community offered a security that our house currently lacked. Sunday passed in a blur of puppy play sessions and board games, with Lucas delighting in the attention of Diane's children. I checked in regularly with Helen, who reported that the forensic accountant was making significant findings that would be presented to the judge on Monday. By Sunday evening, Lucas was exhausted from a day of normal childhood activities, a welcome respite from the stress of recent weeks. He fell asleep quickly, curled around his Stegosaurus stuffed animal, while I sat in Diane's kitchen, nursing a glass of wine and processing the whirlwind of developments. "You want to talk about it?" Diane asked, joining me at the island counter. "You've been checking your phone every 5 minutes." I hesitated, protective of Lucas's privacy even with a trusted friend. "It's complicated. The divorce is turning out to be messier than I anticipated." Diane snorted. "Ryan making things messy? I'm shocked." Her dislike of my soon-to-be ex-husband had been evident from the beginning, though she'd mostly kept it to herself during our marriage. "Is he threatening you? Is that why you're really here?" "Not directly. It's more about financial irregularities that might have legal implications beyond the divorce." I took a sip of wine. "I'd rather not say more until things are clearer." She reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to explain. Stay as long as you need to." Lucas is good for my kids, teaches them dinosaur facts, and gets them interested in science. Emma asked for a telescope after he explained constellations to her yesterday. The thought of Lucas having this positive influence, even in the midst of his own difficult circumstances, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. He's pretty amazing. Like his mom, Diane said firmly. And speaking of amazing mothers, have you given any thought to what you'll do long-term? Career-wise, I mean. I know you've been at the same firm for years, but with everything changing. The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on immediate crises, legal proceedings, protecting Lucas, untangling finances, that I hadn't considered the longer-term picture of our lives post-divorce. Not really. Right now, I'm just trying to keep us afloat. Well, when you're ready to think about it, my company is looking for a financial controller. Better pay than your current position, more regular hours, and a family-friendly environment. The CFO is a single mom herself. Just something to consider. The possibility of a fresh professional start, away from the firm where Ryan had connections with better terms for balancing work and single parenthood, was appealing in a way I hadn't expected. I might take you up on that, once the dust settles. Monday morning arrived with a flurry of activity. Helen called while I was driving Lucas to school, her voice charged with controlled energy. The forensic accountant's preliminary report has been filed with the court. It's significant, Olivia. Very significant. Ryan appears to have been operating a Ponzi scheme with client funds for at least 14 months. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. A Ponzi scheme? Are you certain? The evidence is compelling. New client investments were being used to pay returns to existing clients, while substantial sums were diverted to personal accounts, including the Mexican property and several others we weren't previously aware of. The total misappropriation exceeds $8 million. The number was staggering. What happens now? The judge has referred the matter to the SEC and the district attorney's office. Criminal charges are likely imminent. The restraining order has been granted, and I've arranged for a security assessment of your home before you return. I glanced at Lucas in the rearview mirror, thankfully absorbed in a book and not paying attention to my conversation. When should I tell Lucas? Let's see how today unfolds. The DA's office may move quickly once they review the forensic report. If Ryan is arrested, Lucas will need to hear it from you first, not see it on the news or hear it at school. After dropping Lucas off, with careful instructions to go directly to Diane's house after school rather than home, I headed to the courthouse for the scheduled hearing on the forensic findings. The courtroom was more crowded than before, with several unfamiliar suits that Helen quietly identified as representatives from the SEC and DA's office. Ryan arrived with his attorney and a second lawyer introduced as a criminal defense specialist. He looked haggard, his customary polish diminished by evident stress. He didn't acknowledge me beyond a brief glance, huddling instead with his legal team in intense conversation. Judge Watkins entered promptly at 9:30, her expression grave as she addressed the courtroom. Before we begin, I want to note that this hearing has taken on dimensions beyond standard divorce proceedings. Based on the forensic accountant's findings, which have been shared with appropriate regulatory and law enforcement agencies, we will be addressing both matrimonial and potential criminal matters. She looked directly at Ryan. Mr. Chen, given the serious nature of the financial improprieties identified in the report, representatives from the Securities and Exchange Commission and the District Attorney's Office are present today. They may have questions or take action following these proceedings. Do you understand? Ryan's criminal attorney stood. Your Honor, my client understands the gravity of the situation but maintains his innocence regarding any alleged financial improprieties. We request the opportunity to conduct our own forensic analysis before any actions are taken that might prejudice potential criminal proceedings. That request should be directed to the agencies conducting those investigations, Judge Watkins replied. This court's primary concern remains the equitable distribution of marital assets and the welfare of the minor child involved. The forensic accountant, Frank Dawson, was called to present his findings. A precise, methodical man with wire-rimmed glasses and a soft-spoken demeanor, he detailed the complex web of financial manipulation Ryan had constructed over the previous 18 months. The evidence indicates Mr. Chen began transferring client funds to personal accounts in February of last year, initially in relatively small amounts that were disguised as legitimate investment returns. As the scheme progressed, larger sums were diverted to offshore accounts and shell companies, including Orion Holdings LLC, which was used to purchase multiple properties both domestically and internationally. He displayed a chart showing the flow of funds from client accounts to trading accounts to personal accounts to asset purchases. To maintain the appearance of successful investments, Mr. Chen used new client funds to generate artificial returns for existing clients, a classic Ponzi structure. The scheme accelerated significantly 3 months before Mr. Chen left the marital home, with approximately $2 million transferred during that period alone. Throughout the presentation, Ryan remained outwardly composed, though I noticed his right hand clenching and unclenching beneath the table, a rare tell of extreme stress I'd observed only a few times during our marriage. When Frank Dawson concluded his presentation, the judge turned to Ryan's attorneys. "Does Mr. Chen wish to respond to these findings?" Ryan's criminal attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client disputes these characterizations of his financial activities and requires time to prepare a comprehensive response with our own financial experts." Judge Watkins nodded. "Noted for the record. However, given the compelling evidence presented, this court is making the following rulings regarding the divorce proceedings. All assets identified in the forensic report, including previously undisclosed properties and accounts, are confirmed as marital property subject to division. Given the circumstances, and particularly Mr. Chen's demonstrated intent to conceal assets, the court is awarding Ms. Chen 70% of all recoverable marital assets." She continued, "Primary physical and legal custody of the minor child will remain with Ms. Chen. Mr. Chen's visitation will continue to be supervised, with the additional requirement that all visits take place at the court-appointed supervision center rather than in a home setting." Ryan's matrimonial attorney began to object, but the judge held up her hand. "The court's decisions are based on clear evidence of financial misconduct and attempts to manipulate the minor child through inappropriate communications. Mr. Chen's demonstrated lack of financial transparency directly impacts the court's assessment of his parental judgment." As the judge finalized her rulings, I noticed increasing activity among the SEC and DA representatives. They were conferring quietly, occasionally glancing toward Ryan with expressions that suggested decisions were being made. Helen leaned close to whisper, "They're likely preparing to detain him for questioning, possibly arrest him directly from court." The realization that Lucas's father might be arrested today, might face criminal charges and potential imprisonment, hit me with unexpected force. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and manipulation, Ryan was still Lucas's father. How would I explain this to my sensitive, analytical child who noticed every detail and processed everything so deeply? The hearing concluded with Judge Watkins referring all criminal aspects of the case to the appropriate authorities. This court retains jurisdiction over the matrimonial and custody matters, which will proceed according to the rulings issued today. We're adjourned. As people began gathering their materials, 2 men in dark suits approached Ryan and his attorneys. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the body language was unmistakable. Official, authoritative, allowing no room for negotiation. Ryan glanced in my direction once, his expression unreadable, before being escorted from the courtroom flanked by the suits, his attorneys following closely behind. Helen guided me toward a side exit. The media haven't caught wind of this yet, but they will soon. Financial fraud cases involving investment advisors always draw attention. Let's get you out of here before the cameras arrive. In the parking garage, safely away from potential reporters, I leaned against my car, suddenly lightheaded with the enormity of what had just occurred. They're arresting him, aren't they? Helen nodded. Most likely. The evidence in the forensic report is overwhelming. The SEC doesn't move this quickly unless they're confident in their case. How do I tell Lucas? What do I say? The truth, simplified for his age, that his father made serious mistakes with money that belonged to other people, and now he has to answer for those mistakes to the authorities. Helen's expression softened from professional to compassionate. Children are resilient, Olivia, more than we often give them credit for, and Lucas has you, consistent, honest, and protective. That matters more than anything else right now. I checked my watch. 4 hours until school ended. 4 hours to prepare for one of the most difficult conversations I would ever have with my son. I need to get home. Make sure everything is secure before Lucas comes back. Can you send me updates if you hear anything? Of course. And Olivia, remember that none of this is your fault. Not the fraud, not the impact on Lucas. You've done everything right in an impossible situation. The drive home was a blur of churning thoughts and emotional preparation. When I arrived, a security specialist arranged by Helen was already assessing the property, checking windows and door locks, installing simple monitoring devices that would alert me to any unusual activity. The restraining order provides legal protection, he explained as he programmed the new video doorbell, but these practical measures provide peace of mind. I recommend changing your regular routines for a while, different routes to school and work, varying your schedule when possible. By the time he left, I had 2 hours remaining before I needed to pick up Lucas from Diane's house. I used the time to center myself, researching how to explain parental arrest to children, preparing Lucas's favorite pasta for dinner, and creating a space of normalcy amid extraordinary circumstances. My phone buzzed with a news alert just as I was leaving to get Lucas. Prominent financial advisor Olivia Chen arrested on fraud charges. It had begun. The public exposure Helen had warned about was now reality, with Ryan's name and face likely to be featured in news reports across local and possibly national media. When I arrived at Diane's, Lucas was playing with her golden retriever puppy in the backyard, laughing as the dog chased a tennis ball with more enthusiasm than coordination. Seeing him in this moment of pure childhood joy, I wished desperately that I could preserve his innocence, shield him from the harsh realities about to intrude on his world. "Mom," he called, spotting me at the patio door. "Samson knows how to fetch now. I've been training him all afternoon." "That's wonderful," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Ready to head home? I made pasta for dinner." "Can Samson come over sometime?" he asked as we walked to the car, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Definitely. We'll arrange a playdate soon." I helped him buckle his seatbelt, stealing a moment to brush his hair back from his forehead, a gesture of affection he had recently started to resist as too babyish, but tolerated now with minimal eye-rolling. As we drove home, Lucas chattered about his day at school, a science experiment involving plant growth under different light conditions, an argument with his friend Zach that had been resolved during recess. Normal, everyday topics that would soon be overshadowed by news no child should have to process. I waited until we were home, until dinner was served and Lucas was comfortable at our kitchen table, before broaching the subject that couldn't wait. "Lucas, there's something important I need to talk to you about. It's about Dad." His fork paused halfway to his mouth, his expression immediately shifting to cautious alertness. "Is he canceling the supervised visit?" "No, buddy. It's more serious than that." I took a deep breath, choosing my words with extreme care. Today, after some financial experts looked at Dad's work, they discovered he had been breaking some very important rules about how money should be handled. He was using money that belonged to his clients, people who trusted him, in ways that weren't honest or legal. Lucas set his fork down entirely, his focus absolute. Like stealing? Similar to stealing, yes. It's called fraud, and it's against the law. Today, after the judge heard all the evidence, some government officials took Dad to answer questions about what he did. Lucas processed this silently, his analytical mind visibly working through implications. Is Dad going to jail? The directness of the question shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. I don't know for certain. That will be decided by a different kind of court that handles criminal laws rather than family matters. But it's possible, yes. For how long? That depends on many factors. How much money was involved, whether he cooperates with the authorities, decisions made by judges and prosecutors. It could be months or years. Lucas looked down at his plate, then back up at me, his expression uncannily adult in its comprehension. Will people know? Will they talk about it at school? The question hung in the air between us, Lucas's most immediate concern not about his father's crimes or potential imprisonment, but about the social repercussions he might face. I recognized in that moment how much of childhood revolves around belonging, around not being singled out as different. There might be some news coverage, I admitted, wanting to be honest without causing unnecessary anxiety. And yes, some people might talk about it. If that happens, we'll deal with it together. Your teachers already know we're going through a divorce, so I'll call the school tomorrow to give them a heads up about this new development. That way they can help if any kids say unkind things. Lucas nodded, processing this information with the same careful consideration he applied to complex math problems. Will I still have to see Dad? At the supervision place? That's entirely up to you, buddy. The judge said visits can continue, but only if you want them to. No one will force you to go. He pushed a piece of pasta around his plate, gathering his thoughts. I think I want to wait until I understand better what happened. Is that okay? The relief I felt was immediate and profound. I had been concerned about how supervised visits might proceed with Ryan potentially facing criminal charges, worried about the emotional impact on Lucas of seeing his father in such altered circumstances. That's absolutely okay. You can take all the time you need to process everything. Mom? His voice had grown smaller, more vulnerable. Is it bad that I'm not more sad about Dad? I feel like maybe I should be crying or something. I reached across the table to take his hand. Everyone processes difficult news differently, Lucas. Some people cry right away, some get angry, some need time to think things through. There's no right or wrong way to feel right now. I just feel, I don't know, like it makes sense, somehow. Dad always talked about winning and being the best and having the most. Maybe he just wanted to win too much. Lucas's insight, delivered with such straightforward clarity, was startling in its accuracy. That's a very perceptive observation, I said carefully. Sometimes adults make terrible mistakes because they're focused on the wrong things. Lucas seemed to accept this, returning to his dinner with renewed attention. The conversation shifted to more immediate concerns, homework that needed finishing, a science project deadline approaching, whether we might adopt a dog of our own someday. The resilience of children, their ability to compartmentalize even, the most devastating news never ceased to amaze me. Later that evening, after Lucas was asleep, Helen called with an update. Ryan has been formally charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, and multiple counts of financial misconduct. Bail has been set at $5 million. Will he be able to post it? I asked, wondering if Ryan would soon be released to potentially complicate our lives further. Unlikely. The court has frozen all his known assets, and given the evidence of offshore accounts and flight risk, they're requiring the full amount in cash, not bond. According to my sources, he's being held at the Federal Detention Center pending arraignment tomorrow. I sank onto the couch, the reality of Ryan's situation finally sinking in. I told Lucas this evening. He took it remarkably well. Asked, Practical questions about how it might affect him at school, whether he'd still have to attend visitation. How did you handle the visitation question? I told him it was his choice. He wants to wait for now until he understands the situation better. Helen made a sound of approval. That's the right approach. Speaking of understanding the situation, there have been some additional developments. Marissa has apparently agreed to testify against Ryan in exchange for immunity. She's claiming she only became aware of the full extent of the fraud in recent months and was coerced into maintaining her silence. Do you believe her? Prosecutors seem to. According to their timeline, she was involved but in a secondary capacity. Ryan was the architect of the scheme. Either way, her testimony strengthens their case considerably. After hanging up, I checked the security system newly installed throughout our home, then looked in on Lucas one final time. He was sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around his stegosaurus, face relaxed in the soft glow of his constellation, Nightlight. Standing in his doorway, I made a silent promise to shield him from as much of the coming storm as possible. The next morning brought the media attention Helen had warned about. When I opened the front door to retrieve the newspaper, 2 reporters were already positioned at the edge of our property. They called out questions as I quickly retreated inside, asking about Ryan's arrest, whether I had been aware of the fraud, how Lucas was coping with the news. I closed the door without responding, my heart racing. This was exactly what I had hoped to avoid, our private family crisis becoming public spectacle. I called Helen immediately. "I'll file for a protection order regarding media harassment," she said after I described the situation. "In the meantime, consider using your garage entrance and perhaps having Lucas stay with your friend Diane again for a few days until this initial wave of interest passes." "I don't want to disrupt his routine more than necessary," I said, watching through the window as another news van parked across the street. "He needs stability right now, not constant changes." "I understand, but his privacy matters too. Television cameras following him to school won't provide stability either." She was right, of course. I texted Diane, who immediately offered not just her home but her assistance in navigating the situation. "Emma would love another sleepover with Lucas," she wrote. "And I can drive them both to school through our community's back entrance where no reporters can lurk." The plan settled, I called Lucas's school to explain the situation. The principal, Dr. Winters, was reassuringly professional. "We've dealt with high-profile family situations before, Ms. Chen. We'll increase staff presence during arrival and dismissal times, restrict media access to school property, and have our guidance counselor check in with Lucas regularly. His teachers will be notified to be alert for any signs of distress or bullying." "Thank you," I said, grateful for the school's immediate support. "Lucas is concerned about other children talking about the situation. We'll address that proactively. Our policy is to respect family privacy while providing appropriate support. We can arrange a quiet space for Lucas during lunch or recess if he feels overwhelmed at any point." When Lucas woke, I explained the new plan as simply as possible. "There are some reporters outside who want to ask questions about Dad. To give them time to lose interest, we're going to stay with Diane, Emma, and Samson for a few days. How does that sound?" To my relief, he seemed more excited about extended time with the puppy than concerned about the reason for our temporary relocation. While he packed his backpack with books and small treasures from his collection, I gathered essential clothing and documents, keeping watch through the windows as the media presence outside continued to grow. Diane arrived shortly before noon, pulling her SUV directly into our garage as arranged. Lucas climbed into the backseat beside Emma, immediately engaged in conversation about a shared science project, while I quickly loaded our bags. "The back roads should be clear," Diane said as she navigated carefully out of the neighborhood. "My neighbor works at the courthouse and says the press is dividing its attention between your house and Ryan's arraignment this afternoon." Ryan's arraignment. Another milestone in this unfolding catastrophe that would impact Lucas for years to come. "Has it been on the news already?" I asked quietly, glancing back to ensure Lucas was still distracted. Local morning shows, yes. Nothing national yet. But that might change depending on how many clients were affected by the fraud. Diane kept her voice low, mindful of the children. How are you holding up? I'm functioning, I replied, which was the most honest assessment I could give. The emotional toll hadn't fully registered yet. I was still operating in crisis management mode, focused entirely on Lucas's well-being and immediate practical concerns. Diane's home offered a welcome sanctuary from the chaos. The children disappeared into the backyard with Samson, while Diane prepared lunch and I set up a makeshift workspace at her dining room table. My firm had granted emergency leave given the circumstances, but there were still clients who needed attention and deadlines that couldn't be ignored entirely. Around 2 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Helen. Arraignment complete. Not guilty plea entered. Bail denied due to flight risk. Trial scheduled for January. Call when you can talk privately. January. Nearly 6 months away. 6 months of legal proceedings, media coverage, and explaining increasingly complex concepts to Lucas as his father's case moved through the system. The weight of it all suddenly felt crushing. I stepped into Diane's guest room to return Helen's call, closing the door for privacy. The judge denied bail entirely? I asked immediately. Yes. The prosecution presented evidence that Ryan had been researching countries without extradition treaties. They also found a recently purchased passport under an alias among his possessions. Helen paused. Olivia, there's something else you should know. The scope of the fraud appears to be significantly larger than initially estimated. The current figure is closer to $15 million. The number was staggering. How many clients were affected? At least 37 individuals and 4 small business pension funds. The prosecutor's office is still identifying victims and assessing losses. Some people appear to have lost their entire retirement savings. The human impact of Ryan's actions hit me with fresh force. These weren't just financial transactions on a spreadsheet. They represented actual people with dreams and plans that had been devastated by his greed. People who had trusted him with their futures, just as I had once trusted him with mine. There will likely be civil suits as well, Helen continued, though those will probably be directed primarily at Ryan's firm rather than affecting you personally. The forensic evidence clearly shows you had no knowledge or involvement in the fraudulent activities. What about the house? Our other assets? Will those be subject to seizure? The house is complicated because of the home equity line, Ryan. Established. The court has placed a hold on any sale or transfer pending resolution of both the criminal case and the divorce proceedings. For now, you can remain there without making payments, but the long-term disposition will depend on multiple factors. After ending the call, I stood at the guest room window, watching Lucas and Emma playing with Samson in the backyard. Lucas was showing Emma how to properly throw a ball for the puppy to chase, demonstrating the technique with patient precision. Even in the midst of personal turmoil, his essential character, thoughtful, analytical, kind, remained unchanged. The days at Diane's house established a new temporary routine. I drove the children to school each morning through the private back entrance of Diane's gated community, avoiding the reporters who had quickly discovered our location but couldn't gain access to the neighborhood. Lucas spent his days in classes where teachers were subtly attentive to his emotional state, and afternoons playing with Emma and Samson, momentarily free from the adult concerns that had invaded his life. I divided my time between remote work, consultations with Helen, and researching therapists specializing in children dealing with parental incarceration, a specialty I had never imagined needing, but now recognized as essential for Lucas's long-term well-being. 4 days after Ryan's arraignment, Dr. Winters called from the school. Ms. Chen, I wanted to let you know about an incident that occurred during lunch today. Another student made some unkind comments to Lucas about his father's situation. Our staff intervened immediately, but I thought you should be aware. My stomach tightened. Was Lucas upset? What happened exactly? A fifth grader, apparently, showed Lucas a news story on a cell phone and made remarks about criminals going to prison. Lucas handled it remarkably well. He simply said that adults make their own choices and have to face the consequences, then walked away. Our guidance counselor checked in with him afterward, and he seemed composed, though perhaps a bit subdued. The principal's description of Lucas's response, mature, measured, factual, was so characteristic of my son that it brought tears to my eyes. Thank you for letting me know. I'll talk with him this evening. When Lucas emerged from school that afternoon, his expression was carefully neutral, the face he wore when processing difficult emotions. I waited until we were in the car before asking gently, "Dr. Winters mentioned there was an incident at lunch today. Do you want to talk about it?" He shrugged, looking out the window. Tyler Brooks showed me Dad's picture on his phone from a news website. The headline said, "Financial advisor faces decades in prison for massive fraud scheme." Tyler said criminals deserve to be locked up forever. That must have been hard to hear, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building within me that a child would deliberately cause such pain to another. I already knew Dad might go to prison. You told me that. Lucas turned to look at me directly. The article said he hurt lots of people by taking their money. Is that true? I nodded, committed to honesty. Yes, many people trusted Dad with their savings, and he misused that trust. That's why the consequences are so serious. Lucas absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. Tyler's dad lost his job last year. His mom works 2 jobs now. He said that's why he hates thieves. He paused, connecting dots with his characteristic precision. Did Dad steal from people like Tyler's family? People who needed their money? The question was devastating in its insight. The full details aren't clear yet, but yes, it seems Dad took money from regular people who were counting on those savings for important things. So Tyler's right to be angry, even though he was mean about it. Tyler has a right to his feelings, yes, but not to be unkind to you. You aren't responsible for your dad's actions. Lucas nodded slowly. I know. That's what I told Tyler. 2. I said I live with you now and you're honest about money and everything else. He looked out the window again, watching the familiar streets pass by. Can we go home soon? To our real house, not Diane's? I miss my telescope and my books. The question caught me off guard. I had assumed Lucas was comfortable at Diane's, perhaps even preferred the distraction of Emma and Samson to the emptier quiet of our home. Are you ready to go back? There might still be some reporters around. I know, but it's our house, and the reporters will eventually find something else to talk about, right? That's what happens on the news. They get excited about something, and then move on to the next exciting thing. His astute observation of media patterns brought a smile to my face despite everything. That's very true. Tell you what, I'll check with Helen about the current situation, and if things have calmed down a bit, we can go home this weekend. How does that sound? Lucas gave a definitive nod. Good. I want to sleep in my own room with my stars on the ceiling. That evening, after the children were asleep, Diane joined me at her kitchen island where I was reviewing financial documents Helen had sent regarding the status of our recoverable assets. Lucas mentioned wanting to go home, she said, sliding a cup of tea across the counter to me. Are you ready for that? I'm not sure, I admitted. The house holds so many memories now, not just of the marriage, but of Ryan's betrayal, his walking out, all of it. Part of me wonders if we should make a fresh start somewhere else. That's understandable. But Lucas might need the stability of familiar surroundings right now. And practically speaking, the real estate market isn't ideal for selling a house, with legal complications attached to it. She was right on both counts. Helen says the reporters have mostly moved on to other stories. There will be renewed interest when the trial approaches, but that's months away. then maybe going home is the right move for now. You can always revisit the decision later when things settle. Diane sipped her tea thoughtfully. Have you given any more thought to that job opportunity I mentioned? The timing might actually be perfect. New professional start to match this transition in your personal life. I had been considering the possibility more seriously than I had initially admitted. My current firm had been supportive during the immediate crisis, but I was acutely aware of the whispers and sidelong glances that awaited my return. Ryan had been well known in the financial community, and his dramatic fall from grace would inevitably cast shadows on anyone associated with him, however unfairly. I might be interested, I said carefully. Once we're settled back at home and I have a better sense of what our new normal looks like. The weekend brought our return to the house that no longer quite felt like home but remained, as Lucas had noted, ours nonetheless. A single news van was parked at the far end of the street when we arrived, but no reporters approached as we quickly unloaded our belongings from Diane's car. Inside, everything looked exactly as we had left it, yet somehow changed, as if the knowledge of Ryan's crimes had altered the very atmosphere of the rooms we had once shared as a family. I opened windows to dispel the slight mustiness, while Lucas immediately went to check on his constellation projector and book collection. "Everything's still here," he announced with satisfaction, returning to the kitchen where I was sorting through accumulated mail. "Can we have pizza for dinner to celebrate being home?" "Absolutely," I agreed, grateful for his positive framing of our return. "Any special requests?" "Extra cheese, no olives." He climbed onto a stool at the counter, watching me organize bills and correspondence into neat piles. "Mom, can I ask you something about Dad?" I set down the mail, giving him my full attention. "Of course. Is he allowed to call me from where he is now?" The question revealed Lucas's ongoing processing of his father's situation. "He can, yes. Prison inmates have scheduled times when they can make phone calls, but those calls would need to be arranged through his lawyer and approved by the court given the current circumstances." "Has he tried?" "To call me, I mean." I hesitated, uncertain of the best approach. Truth had been our cornerstone throughout this ordeal, but I was reluctant to add to Lucas's emotional burden. "Not yet, buddy. He might be still adjusting to his situation, or maybe his lawyer advised him to wait." Lucas nodded, accepting this explanation. "If he does call, I think I would talk to him, not because I'm not still mad, but because I have questions only he can answer." The maturity of his response was simultaneously heartbreaking and awe-inspiring. At 8 years old, he was approaching his father's catastrophic failures with more emotional intelligence than many adults could muster. "That's a very thoughtful perspective, Lucas. If he does call, we'll handle it together, okay?" The weekend passed in the quiet rhythm of household restoration, laundry, grocery shopping, preparing Lucas's workspace for the school week ahead. By Sunday evening, our home had begun to feel more like ours again, the lingering shadows of Ryan's presence gradually receding as we reclaimed each space with new arrangements and routines. Monday morning brought an unexpected development. As I prepared breakfast, an email notification appeared from Marissa's attorney. "Ms. Chen, my client has information regarding college funds established for Lucas that were not included in the forensic accounting. She wishes to ensure these funds remain available for their intended purpose, regardless of other legal proceedings. Please contact me to discuss." I forwarded the email to Helen with a question mark, uncertain whether this was a legitimate attempt to secure resources for Lucas or some new manipulation from Ryan's camp. Her response was measured. "Approach with caution but worth exploring. I'll arrange a formal meeting with appropriate legal protections in place." The following day, Helen and I met with Marissa and her attorney in a conference room at Helen's office. Marissa looked markedly different from the confident assistant who had stood in my kitchen the morning Ryan left, her designer clothes replaced by a conservative suit, her expression subdued rather than triumphant. "Thank you for meeting with us," her attorney began formally. "Ms. Harris has information she believes is relevant to your son's financial future, which she wishes to provide as a good faith gesture independent of her cooperation in the criminal proceedings against Mr. Chen." Marissa opened a folder she had brought, pushing several documents across the table. 3 years ago, Ryan established a separate educational trust for Lucas through his grandmother's estate. It was structured as an irrevocable gift trust, legally distinct from his personal or business assets. She met my eyes directly for the first time. "He kept it separate from your joint planning intentionally, initially as a tax strategy, but later to ensure it wouldn't be included in any financial disclosures when he left." Helen reviewed the documents with professional scrutiny. "This appears to be a legitimate trust structure with approximately $180,000 currently held by third-party trustees. If these documents are accurate, this fund should indeed be protected from seizure in the criminal proceedings." "Why are you sharing this now?" I asked Marissa directly. She hesitated, glancing at her attorney before responding. "Because whatever Ryan did, whatever I may have helped him do, Lucas shouldn't suffer for it. He's just a kid." She pushed another document forward. "This is the contact information for the trustee. They're aware of the situation and have confirmed the fund remains secure and designated exclusively for Lucas's education." After they left, Helen continued examining the trust documentation. "This actually appears legitimate and properly established. The timing predates the fraudulent activities identified in the forensic report, and the funding source traces back to a gift from Ryan's grandmother that was appropriately reported on tax filings." "So Lucas still has a college fund," I said, the relief unexpected and profound. "Something Ryan did right in the midst of everything he did wrong." "It seems so. We'll need to verify everything independently, of course, but this could be a significant positive outcome amid all the difficulties." That evening, I shared the news with Lucas in simple terms he could understand. "Dad set up a special savings account for your college education a few years ago. It's still safe and will be there for you when you're ready for college." Lucas considered this information with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "Even though Dad did bad things with other money?" "Yes. This account was created properly and specifically for your future education. No one else's money was involved." He nodded, processing this complexity, that his father could simultaneously commit profound financial wrongdoing, yet also make legitimate provisions for his son's future. "That's good," he said finally. "College is expensive. I was worried I might not be able to go." The fact that my 8-year-old had been quietly worrying about college affordability amid everything else broke my heart anew. "You'll definitely be able to go to college, Lucas. I promise." The weeks that followed established gradual patterns of our new life. The media interest in Ryan's case ebbed and flowed with each new legal development, but rarely intruded directly into our daily routine anymore. Lucas returned to his science club and started astronomy lessons with a retired professor who volunteered at the planetarium. I interviewed for the controller position at Diane's company and received an offer with better compensation and more flexible hours than my previous role. 6 weeks after Ryan's arrest, his attorney contacted Helen to request a supervised phone call with Lucas. "The decision is entirely yours," Helen advised me. "The court has authorized the communication if you and Lucas are comfortable with it, but there's absolutely no obligation." I discussed it with Lucas's therapist first, seeking guidance on how to approach the question with him. "Ask him directly," she advised. "Children in these situations often feel powerless. Giving Lucas agency in this decision respects his emotional needs and helps him develop healthy boundaries." That evening, I raised the subject carefully during our dinner. "Lucas, Dad has asked if he can call you on the phone. This would be monitored by his lawyer and would only happen if you want to talk to him. It's completely your choice." Lucas set down his fork, considering the proposition with serious attention. "What would I say to him?" Anything you want. You could ask questions if you have them, or just listen if he has things to tell you. Or you can decide you're not ready to talk to him yet. All of those choices are okay. He thought for several moments, his expression contemplative. I think I want to talk to him, not because I'm not still disappointed, but because I have questions. And maybe he needs to know I'm okay, even though he did bad things. The wisdom in his response left me momentarily speechless. At 8 years old, Lucas was demonstrating emotional intelligence that surpassed many adults I knew, recognizing both his own needs and the possibility that his father might need reassurance despite being the one who had caused the harm. The call was arranged for the following Saturday morning. Ryan's attorney would be present on his end, while Lucas and I would use the speakerphone in our living room, allowing me to monitor the conversation while giving Lucas privacy to speak freely. When the phone rang exactly at the appointed time, Lucas answered with steady composure. Hello? This is Lucas. Lucas. Ryan's voice sounded strained, lacking its usual smooth confidence. It's Dad. How are you doing, buddy? I'm okay, Lucas replied, his tone neutral but not cold. I joined the astronomy club at school. We're learning about nebulae and different types of stars. That's great. An awkward pause followed. I'm sorry I haven't been able to call before now. Things have been complicated. Mom explained about jail and the rules about phone calls. Lucas glanced at me briefly, then continued. She told me about the money things too, that you took money that wasn't yours and now you're in trouble with the law. The directness of his statement seemed to momentarily silence Ryan. When he finally responded, his voice was quieter. Yes. I made some very serious mistakes, Lucas. Bad choices that hurt people. Why did you do it? The question was simple but profound in its childlike clarity. Another pause. That's difficult to explain. I wanted more. More money. More success. More recognition. I started cutting corners, telling myself it wasn't really wrong because eventually everyone would get paid. But that wasn't true. And deep down, I knew it. Lucas considered this, his expression thoughtful. Ms. Harper at school says there's always a choice to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Ms. Harper is very wise. Ryan's voice cracked. Slightly. I should have made better choices. Are you sorry because you did wrong things or just because you got caught? Lucas's question, delivered without accusation but with genuine curiosity, cut straight to the heart of moral reckoning. The silence that followed was longer this time. At first, Ryan finally admitted, I was mostly sorry I got caught, but I've had a lot of time to think here. Now I'm starting to understand how many people I hurt, including you and your mom. So I'm sorry for the wrong things themselves, not just the consequences. Lucas nodded, though Ryan couldn't see him. That's good. Being actually sorry is important. For making things better. You're right. Ryan's voice softened. When did you get so smart about these things? Mom and I talk a lot, and I see Dr. Bennett every Tuesday. She helps me understand complicated feelings. The mention of therapy seemed to catch Ryan off guard. That's good, buddy. I'm glad you have someone to talk to. He cleared his throat. Lucas, I want you to know something important. None of this, absolutely none of it, is your fault. The mistakes were all mine. I know, Lucas said simply. Mom tells me that all the time, and I believe her because she always tells me the truth, even about hard things. No. The conversation continued for another 15 minutes, with Lucas asking practical questions about jail conditions and legal processes, and Ryan answering as honestly as the circumstances allowed. There were no tearful reconciliations or dramatic apologies, just a measured exchange between a child seeking understanding and a father facing the consequences of his actions. After saying goodbye, Lucas sat quietly for several moments, processing the conversation in his characteristic, thoughtful manner. "He sounds different," he finally observed. "Less big." I understood exactly what he meant. Ryan's presence had always been expansive, commanding, larger than life. Now, stripped of his professional facade and societal position, he was revealed as simply human, flawed, fallible, diminished by his own choices. "People often change when they face the results of their actions," I said carefully. "Sometimes, that change is genuine and lasting. Other times, it's temporary." Lucas nodded, accepting this complexity. "I'm glad I talked to him, but I don't think I need to talk again for a while. Is that okay?" "That's absolutely okay, buddy. You get to decide what contact feels right for you." The months that followed brought a gradual stabilization to our lives. I started my new position as financial controller, finding unexpected satisfaction in the fresh professional environment where I was valued for my skills, rather than defined by my connection to Ryan. Lucas thrived in school, his natural academic abilities flourishing with the consistent emotional support of therapy, and our increasingly open communication at home. Ryan's case proceeded through the legal system, eventually resulting in a plea agreement that acknowledged his full responsibility for the fraud. He received a 12-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 8 years, along with orders for financial restitution that would extend well beyond his incarceration. The news coverage, which had initially been so intrusive in our lives, gradually faded as newer scandals captured public attention. 1 year after Ryan's arrest, Lucas and I stood in the kitchen of a new home, smaller than our previous house but entirely ours, purchased with my improved salary and free from the legal entanglements of the past. Boxes surrounded us, waiting to be unpacked and organized in Lucas's methodical fashion. "Mom," he said, carefully unwrapping his treasured telescope from its protective padding. "I was thinking about something Dr. Bennett and I talked about yesterday." "What's that, buddy?" I asked, labeling boxes with marker to help direct our unpacking process. She asked me if I thought our family was broken now because of everything with Dad. I told her no, it's not broken. It's just different. He looked up at me, his expression earnest. "Families come in lots of configurations. Ours is just you and me now, but that still counts as complete. Right?" I set down the marker, overcome by the wisdom of my 9-year-old son who had navigated the collapse of his familiar world with such remarkable resilience. "That's exactly right, Lucas. We're not broken or incomplete. We're just us. And that's more than enough." He nodded, satisfied with this confirmation, and returned to carefully arranging his crystal collection on a newly installed shelf. "I think I might want to be a judge when I grow up. Or maybe a forensic accountant. Someone who helps make sure people follow the rules about important things." "You'd be excellent at either one," I said, watching this remarkable child who had somehow emerged from trauma with his core self, not just intact but strengthened. His natural sense of justice and order now informed by a deeper understanding of human complexity. As we continued unpacking, transforming the empty house into our home, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The path had been unimaginably difficult, paved with betrayal, public exposure, and the shattering of what I had once believed was a secure family foundation. Yet somehow, through the wreckage, Lucas and I had constructed something new and unexpectedly strong. A relationship built on honest communication, mutual support, and the profound understanding that sometimes the most valuable things emerge only after everything else falls apart. That evening, after the essential unpacking was complete, Lucas and I stood in the backyard of our new home. He had insisted on setting up his telescope immediately, eager to observe the clear night sky from this different vantage point. As he made careful adjustments to the focus, his expression was one of complete concentration, present in the moment, engaged with his passion, unencumbered by the weight of the past. "There it is," he said with quiet satisfaction, stepping back to let me look through the eyepiece. "Polaris, the North Star. It stays fixed while everything else moves around it." I looked through the telescope at the steady, bright point of light, a constant in the shifting celestial landscape. "It's beautiful. Sailors used it for navigation for thousands of years," Lucas continued, reciting the facts with his characteristic precision. "When everything else was uncertain, they could always find their way by locating the North Star." The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Throughout the tumult of the past year, Lucas had been my constant, my fixed point of light guiding decisions and priorities. His resilience had inspired my own. His openness to honest communication had shaped our path forward. His capacity for understanding had humbled and educated me. "Ready to see some others?" he asked, already adjusting the telescope's position. "There's a whole universe up there." "I'm ready," I said, watching my son's face illuminated by starlight, his future as vast and full of possibility as the sky above us. "Show me everything." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.